My name is Bonnie Weck. My husband Michael and I have been St. Stephen's Spirit members for at least 20 years. Over those years, I've been involved in the life of in the community in many ways. But this is a first, homily by Zoom. Be assured it was not on my bucket list. Where are these weeds coming from? I can relate to that question in today's gospel as I tend our modest-sized yard and flower garden. And I'm guessing I'm not alone with that question. While walking in our neighborhood recently, I saw a sign on a garden fence that read, "Free weeds." This week we continue our July liturgical reading list of the parables of Jesus. Today we have 3 more lifted from the headlines of ordinary life in Jesus' time. Farming, seeds, wheat, weeds, bread making. As we ponder them, it is helpful to remember that parables are designed to interrupt our usual way of seeing things and challenge our certainties. In the words of Isaiah, "Your ways are not my ways," says our God. First, we hear the lenient farmer's response to the workers' frustration with the weeds growing with the wheat. What? Did I hear that right? Don't pull the weeds? Then we hear about the farmer who plants mustard, generally understood to be a weed, and seems to glory in its abundance and the hospitality it provides the birds. I recently learned about the abundant proliferation of wild mustard from volunteers trying to eradicate it from the wooded Dale Street Reservoir near our home. It appeared to be a never-ending job, as the clearing of only a small area, yielded dozens full of garbage bags. Finally, a bit of humor in the third parable, as it begs the question, how much yeast does one need to make bread with 40 pounds of flour? Apparently a lot, but the answer is never given. Good thing it wasn't pandemic time, where there would not have been any yeast on the shelves. An unknown amount of yeast, plus 40 pounds of flour, and a hard-working baker woman makes an abundance of bread, enough to be shared by an entire community. It is pretty obvious that these parables were not designed as lessons on farming or bread making. They are invitations meant to challenge us to imagine God's desire for the kingdom, to engage our response in bringing about the kingdom here and now. Imagine God's desire for a kingdom where the voices of wheat and the perceived voices of weeds engage in conversation in search of truth and understanding, to lay foundations that support works of justice and charity for the common good of all. Imagine God's desire for a kingdom where all people are treated with dignity and respect, where patience, like that of the lenient farmer, is willing to believe the best of one another, and where, as our wisdom reading instructed, the just must be kind, as our God is kind. Imagine God's desire for a kingdom where the power of forgiveness to heal relationships is stronger than the need to retaliate and get even with one's enemies by resorting to violence of any kind. Imagine God's desire for a kingdom where the yeast of small movements like Black Lives Matter and protests against offensive names and mascots of sports teams grow into systemic dismantling of deeply rooted racism in all parts of our society. Imagine God's desire for a kingdom where the environment is healthy and hospitable to the birds of the air and all God's critters. Although given the rabbits in our backyard, I'm not sure they ought to be included. But just kidding. Imagine God's desire for a kingdom where the hungry of our community, our country, and our world are fed out of the abundance of a few, where wealth and food are equitably distributed. These are a few of my imaginings of God's desire for the kingdom that evoked by these parables. What do you imagine the kingdom to be like? You will have a chance to share during the breakout time. It is obvious that there is lots to be done. At times, this kingdom making seems too much, too hard. At times like this, we need Paul's reminder in today's second reading that the Spirit knows the desire of our hearts and comes to help us in our weakness. We need the power of our personal prayer and the power of our prayer in community to ground us in those desires. Then we can draw hope from the mystery of the Spirit's action within and amongst us. As a final perspective, I offer these words, written by Bishop Ken Untner, but often attributed to Oscar Romero. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, but there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it well. It may be incomplete, but it is the beginning, a step along the way, as an opportunity for God's grace to enter and do the rest. Amen.